Hello, and welcome back. This video is about showing how to use a rich text block with colors, then adding typewriter logic, and finally, making the typewriter logic work with the rich text block style tags. And a special thanks to all my supporters. Thank you for helping me help others. We're starting with a fresh Unreal Engine 5.6 blank blueprint project named Rich Edit Typewriter. We're using a blank project to keep the video simple and the project small, but you would most likely just be adding a rich edit text block to your UI somewhere. And as this is a blank project, the first thing we're going to do is create a new blank map. I'm just going to use an empty level, and then we'll just save this as the map, and then go into our project settings. And just to make sure that we're using the map we want, when we reload the project, in here and set these to the map. So next we're going to create a widget blueprint, user widget type. We'll just call this WBP HUD. And in our map level blueprint, we're just going to create widget. And add it to viewport. Again, typically you do this in your player or player controller, but we don't have either of those in a blank project. So in our HUD widget here, we're just going to add a canvas panel. And underneath that, we're going to put a border. And inside the border, we'll put the rich text block. So the border I'm going to set, and I'm going to hold Control and Shift, click on the center here, and then I'm just going to make this 400 by 200. Going to change the brush color to a darker gray. And then for our rich text block, just going to add some text. And with that, we can hit compile after I set this to always. And you can see two things here. First of all, the text is not readable. And secondly, it's not wrapping. For the wrapping, we can just click auto wrap text. And the reason this is just some symbol is because for a rich text block, you need to use text styles. So that's text style set here. This is just you choose a data table, which is based on a certain type. So we'll go create that data table. So in here, we right click, we go to miscellaneous data table or data table. And down here at the bottom, rich text style row is what we want. Just call this DT underscore rich text. And in there, we need to add an entry. And you can see the text style here. We have our font, color, a bunch of shadow stuff, a bunch of highlight stuff, and whatever. So we need to set a font. So we set the font, we're just going to use Roboto, and then we want to set our text color to white. Lastly, we need to make sure that a row in here is named default. The uppercase is not required, but I do prefer it. Just going to pop that out a little bit. So if we go back into our HUD and then we compile and save, after selecting it as the text style set, you can now see it's just white text. But we're not here for some boring white text, so how do we add some color? First thing we do is in our data table, we add another row. I'm just going to set this one again to Roboto. I'll just make it a little bigger, and we'll make it green. And we'll just call this green. So with that saved, in here, we just need to surround a section with the proper tag. So the way this works is you do less than the name of the style, greater than. Where we want that style to end, we do a less than / greater than. Once we compile and save that, we now have model as green. So that's the basics of using a rich text block. You can add some colors in there. You can do some other stuff with sizing and some shadowing and outlining, as you saw. We're going to add the typewriter functionality now. So in our graph, first of all, we're going to create a function called start typewriter. And this function is going to accept an input. We'll just call it the text. which obviously is a text string type. It's a string because we can edit and manipulate strings, but the text blocks are actually text, so it'll get converted. So first of all, in here, we want to save our initial text. So we're going to promote that to a variable. We'll just call this full text. We'll need that later. I also want to make another variable, so I'm going to promote this again. And this one I want to call remaining text. This is the text that is still yet to get copied over. And then lastly, we have another one. I'm just going to, for convenience, promote this to a variable. This one will be called copied text. And then I'm going to alt-click here because we don't actually want to set it to anything. And then we're taking our rich text block, which I forgot to set as a variable. So in here, we take this. We just want to make this a variable, and we'll just call it rich text block and get rid of that underscore number. So now we can control drag this out. We need to call set text. And as you can see by the color and hovering over it, it takes the text, not a string, so it'll just convert when we drag it in like that. Lastly, since our typewriter effect is just adding letters over time, we need a timer. So we're going to call set timer by function name. We're just going to set this to some low value like 0.1, so that means 10 characters per second will be copied. We do want this looping, and our function name here, we can just put typewriter timer. And I'm just going to copy that name, create a new function, just call it typewriter timer. And we want to save this handle, so promote that to a variable as well. We can call it typewriter timer handle. And with that done, I need to go back here as well, and we just want to add a button to the canvas panel. Similarly, I'm just going to Shift and Control, click the center here, and then move it down 300. And we'll just make the button bigger for convenience, so double size. Now we're just creating this button so that we can add some interaction. And so I need to make it a variable just so that we can then add an on-click event. So all the on-click event right now is calling start typewriter, which we just need to send in some text. So for this, I'm going to put how much would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood. So when you click on the button, it's sending along this text. In here, it's setting a bunch of variables. We're setting the initial text of the rich text block to empty, and also resetting copied text to empty. And then we're creating the timer and saving it. So in our typewriter timer function, we first want to check if our remaining text, which is what we're copying over, is empty. And when it is empty, all we're doing is we're taking our timer handle, we're calling clear and invalidate timer by handle. So with the clear part of this being called, that just means this won't continue being called. So then when we do still have remaining text, we want to then call a sequence down here. We're going to start this and have 3 pins. So first of all, we're going to take our remaining text, control drag that out here. We want to get the left character. And we'll just promote this to a local variable. We'll just call this left character. And then what we're doing with that left character is we're taking our copied text. We're then appending the left character to it and setting that back into the copied text. So we're taking the leftmost character of remaining text, copying it into copied text, and then we need to remove the left character from the remaining text. So to do that, we can then call right chop. You might initially think it would be left chop, but right chop is basically keeping the right side and chopping off the count number of characters from the left side. So we just want to get rid of that one character and set that back to remaining text. And lastly, we're then taking our rich text block. We're calling set text on it, and that will just be our copied text. So again, the flow is we're taking the left character from our remaining text, we're then adding it to the copied text, we're then removing that one character from the remaining text so that next time it's not there, and then we're just setting the rich text block to that copied text. I'm just going to save that map. Okay, so then when we hit play, we click the button, it then has a nice typewriter effect. But again, we don't want boring white text, so let's add the green style tag back in and see what happens. So let's hit stop. Back in here, we'll just put a green tag for the wood. And then when we display that, as you can see, the tag is not handled properly. It copies over the style tag one letter at a time, and the word isn't green until it has added the closing bit. So that means two things. First, when we get to the style tag, we need to copy the whole tag. And secondly, the closing bit needs to exist while we're copying that entire section. So to put that and show it in here, basically what I'm saying is it's copying every letter, and then when it gets to this one, it's just copying it, and then it copies the next one, etc. So when we get to this point, we need to then copy this entire section plus a letter. And because if it's copying this to the end of the string and nothing else, the W, it still won't work because this little closing section needs to be there. So effectively, when we copy the W, we need to have it look like that, ignoring everything past that. And then when we copy the next letter, it's got to do that, etc. I'm also just going to go in here too, just in case you accidentally click. I want to set show mouse cursor. This is a player controller function. Even though it's a blank project and we're not creating a player controller, it does still exist. So now when we do that, we hit play. If I click on the background, the mouse does not disappear, and we're good. Now the other thing of note is this: if you hit play, we click the button, it starts typing the text. If you click the button again, it'll just restart it because it's calling start typewriter every time. But if instead, as we're displaying the text, we want to display the full text when we click, kind of like in a dialog window, then we can just do that in a little simple change here. So when we're clicking on the button, the first thing we check is if our timer handle is timer active by handle. Oops. So in the case where the handle is not active, we just do the same thing that we were doing. However, when it is active, we can just set our rich text block, call set text on it, and this is what we kept the full text for. So we don't need to worry about parsing or anything for this. We're just setting it to the full text. And also calling clear and invalidate timer by handle. So now the flow is we start the text, If we click again, it just sets the full text. Click again, it'll restart. So you just keep going through. All right, so back into our flow for the handling the tags. So the first thing I'm going to do is take this bottom section and I'm just going to move it out over here. I'm going to Alt-click this section here because we'll need that. But basically what's happening is, I'll show it over here, we're effectively into a few states. So we want to check if we ever find a less than, because that'll be valid here, and then of course also on the closing section. And then during the portion where we're writing out this would, we need to be continuously adding the closing section onto it. And then when it's done, we kind of just remove it and continue on. So with that, we effectively have a state where we're handling the less than, and then we have a state where we're handling the entire style tag section. So what we need there is we need a variable to handle the section across many calls. So in this case, we can call this one is adding close tag. And this one is maintained throughout the typewriter effect. So in our start typewriter, we want to make sure that we reset it back to false. And then in our typewriter timer, we're checking our left character here, and then we can check to see if that character is equal exactly to less than. And then we can promote that to a local variable, and we'll just call that is less than. So then we have our section in the center here. We're taking our is adding close tag. We're branching off that. And then we also need to branch off the is less than. So we'll drag this out. We'll branch off here. And then we can duplicate this. Branch off here. So effectively coming in here, we have two states that split into two states each, so we have 4 total states. Now when we're not adding a close tag, we go down here. If this first character is not a less than, then we just need to add the character like we have been. And pop this down here. So then when we do have a less than, we take our remaining text. We know that there's a less than there, so then we want to find the greater than. So we can call find substring. We're searching for the greater than. We don't care about case, we're not searching from the end, and the start position is the beginning. So -1 or 1, it's fine. So I'm not doing error validation on this, but basically the return value here will be the index where it finds the greater than, or -1 if it doesn't find one. So you would probably want to check for -1. If it ever returns a -1, it's because when you typed in this text here or read it in from some other location, you just didn't have a greater than matching the less than. So that's kind of a design or development level issue, so you can just correct that at the time. So we're just not going to do it right now. So instead, what we want to do is we want to take our remaining text. We're then going to get the leftmost characters from it, and this will be based on this. So this location will give us the location of the greater than, but we want to take the greater than and the next character, so we're going to add 2. So we just add 2 to that. We put it in here, and then what comes out of here will be that less than, green, greater than, and then the first character, or the next character, which is W in this case. So then similar to down here, we can take this block, we'll just copy and paste that up here. Instead of adding the left character, we're taking what's returned here. Make sure that this gets hooked up. And similarly, we're not just removing one character from the left side, we're removing the entire tag and next character from that left side. So if we run that now, it won't work properly, but it'll work, part of the way. So when we click this, we're getting, once we get to the green section, it was then pasted out entirely, and then it continued along. So then if we want that to work correctly, at this point in time, we've pasted in the green tag. We also need to set our adding close tag to true. And we want to append to our copy text that adding close tag. Just for convenience, I'm just going to add a local variable. We'll just call this close text. Make this a string. And I'll just set this close text value to less than / greater than. So then we're just appending that close text to the copied text, setting it back to the, oops, not that one, the copied text. And then of course down here, it'll just add it to the rich text blocks. So if we run that, it looks a little better. Once we get to the green section, it will copy the entire green, the W, and add the closing text. So once the W is first shown, it will show it green. Now it does stop because we have now set is adding close tag to true, which means the flow is now going in here and it doesn't do anything. So the things we want to do in here, and again, I'll just grab all this and just drag it down a bunch more. So if there's a less than and we're inside of the close tag being appended, that means we've gotten to the close tag that's actually part of the text. So when that's the case, we can just take our remaining text and we're going to call right chop. So we're chopping count letters off and keeping the right side. So we're just chopping off the closed text section that's in the remaining text, setting that to remaining text. And then we're setting our is adding closed text back to false. So I probably should have done the false flow first, but basically, as we're progressing through the word would, when we get to the section where the remaining text has the closing tag, so in here, once we're processing, and this is where the cursor is at, we find that we have this. We're also not going to do error checking here, but if this was not exactly those 3 characters, then you would have a nested style tag, and we're not supporting that here. There's a few ways you can do that. The easy way is just don't ever nest tags. If you have functionality that you want multiple tags combined, like maybe you have size of the font in one and the color in a different one, you can just combine them into a second or third tag and leave it at that. So when we've gotten to this point where we know that it is this closing tag, we're effectively just removing that closing tag from the remaining text. Setting is adding close tag to false, so it goes back down to the flow down here. And I'm not going to add it here, but you would have a one timer event where nothing actually looks like it's happening. Because all you've done is you've got to this point, the closing tag is removed, but you're not adding the next character. So then the next tick through this timer function, that's when it will add that character. So if you don't want that little bit of stutter, then in here you can add some logic to again get the last character and then add it to the copied text. So I'll leave that exercise up to you. In our flow here though, when there is no less than, but we're inside of the text loop, what we need to be doing is we need to take our copied text, which has the close tag at the end of it. We want to call left chop on this. And we're getting rid of those 3 characters. So again, left and right chop. Left chop is it's keeping the left side and ignoring or removing the last 3 characters, which we're then setting back to copy text. And then we're just adding the left character again. So we can actually just take the section down here, copy that, and place that right here. So obviously, I made a mistake. Maybe one of my left rights was backwards or something. nope, I was looking at the wrong part in my notes. I did forget I also have to append the closed text again at the end here. So with that done, this should work better. And there we go. So now we have the typewriter effect and we're supporting style tags in the Rich Edit text block. So thanks for watching. If you liked the video and would like to see more, you know what to do. And if you would like to support this channel, watch these videos 2 weeks early, or just want to download the project files, you can do so through my Patreon linked below.